Hari Om, and welcome to Living Ramayana, the podcast where we explore the epic Ramayana and its significance for our daily lives today. We are joined in the studio today by Rebby, one of our study group facilitators, and we are going to get into a very interesting theme after today's story portion. But before that, let's continue with the story. So as we saw, Sri Ram has been given the orders to go into exile by Kaikeyi and by King Dashrath. He's conveyed the news to both his mother, Kausalya, and also to his brother, Lakshman. And he has instructed them both, or advised them, that one, he has to go, because one thing they both tried to do is persuade him not to. And second, that for Kausalya, the best thing to do for her is to stay in Ayodhya and to ensure that everything kind of goes smoothly, given the sort of state that King Dashrath is in. We now see Sri Ram going to break the news to Sitaji. So she has not heard any of this so far. She is expecting the coronation to take place that day. And so she has gotten herself ready. But she sees Ram walking into the palace, not dressed for a coronation. So he's, looking like something is going wrong. He's looking like he's worried about something. He's anxious, perhaps. And she immediately sees that, okay, something is not right. And so she asks him, right, that, today is supposed to be the day of the coronation. What's going on? What's happened? And he explains to her that I've been told to go into the forest for 14 years and I'm going alone. And it's you'll have to stay here. Everyone else is staying behind. So my parents will be here. Bharat will become the king. And so, he can protect you and look after you. But you will have to kind of stay here because the forest is, no place for anyone. It's wild, right? It's not like the kind of forests that we are familiar with living in cities like London, which are very tame and definitely no wildlife around. They're real wild forests. And so he basically says to her that, you have to stay here. Now, in the Valmiki Ramayana, there is this great conversation that then takes place between Sitaji and Sri Ram. And she basically says to him that, listen, I'm your wife. Why are you trying to exclude me here? If you are entitled to follow dharma by following your father's instruction, I'm equally entitled to follow that instruction. I should also be able to do what you are about to do. And so I will also come into the forest with you. And you're saying that the forest is such a terrible place. If you're worried about it, I'll walk in front of you. I will clear the path for you. I will clear the thorns and the bushes and the branches. I will look after you, right? And my joy will be in the fact that I am there with you. She says, this portion of the Ramayana, the Valmiki Ramayana, is great in terms of it's just full of like really awesome dialogue. She says, you're telling me that my duty is to stay here. Do you think that nobody has like made me understand my duty before that? Do you think you're the first person basically to tell me what I should be doing? I know what I should be doing. My father and my mother have already described to me what my dharma is. And I know that it's to be with you. Don't try and tell me that, that I need to stay here, basically. She says, basically, like, don't try and school me. I know what I need to do, and I'm coming with you. And she says that actually, the things that you're describing as being so full of fear and so, so challenging, the fact that I will be with you, whether it's, eating the fruits and the berries and the roots from the ground, or, traversing these mountains and forests and crossing rivers and lakes, I will be under your protection, right? And so there's nothing for me to be scared about. Why should I be fearful of coming into the forest if I'm going to be traveling through the forest with you? So I'm coming with you. She doesn't say I'm coming with you. She says, please take me with you. And she says very clearly, I will not be a burden to you, right? She knows how to look after herself. Rama listens to everything that she says, and he says, listen, I don't know if you heard me, but I really don't think you should come into the forest. And so he goes into this in-depth description of these terrible mountain paths, and there are lions in the forest, and there are the rivers that we have to, cross are full of crocodiles, and there is no kind of, there's no bed to sleep on. You're a princess. You're used to your maybe silk sheets and you're comfortable, your duvet and whatever it is. There's none of that in the forest. You're going to have to sleep on the ground. You're going to have to, cover yourself with straw and leaves. You're going to have to use whatever you find for pillows. And so it's not a comfortable life. And I think that you should really stay here. Right? And it's interesting how the first time he speaks to her, he says, you should stay here. And after she says her bit, he says, now you should think carefully about whether you want to stay or come. And so he's part of the way to kind of agreeing that she'll come with him. And after he says this, that, you think carefully because it's dangerous and it's difficult, finally she just says, listen, everything that you have described as a difficulty and a challenge, the fact that I will be with you will make all of those things joyful. None of it will be a challenge anymore because I will be with you. And there is no one in this world who can protect me better than you can. So if you're worried for my safety, then actually you should take me with you because you're the best person to be able to, look after me. And so she says that really there is no choice here, right? I have to come with you. That's my duty. That's my role. And that's the choice that I'm making. And so finally, after all of this, she's very good at persuading him and presenting her point very clearly, very logically. Rama says, okay, I can see that, you're not going to stay here. So yes, you can come. Now, instead of just him, there's two of them who are going, right? Now, Lakshman enters the scene. And Lakshman essentially is not going to be left behind. He is absolutely not going to agree for Sri Ram to go without him. And so he once again pleads, that please can I come with you? Please can I cannot be separated from you, and the fulfillment of my life will be in serving you. And to that, Sri Ram says, okay, but first you go and take permission from your mother. Because remember, Rama has been given the instruction by Kaikeyi and Dashrath Maharaj. Kausalyaji has agreed. But Sumitra, Lakshman's mother, has not yet been informed of any of this, and therefore, in order for Lakshman to go, Sri Rama now says, you first take permission from your mother, and then we'll see. So now how Sumitra reacts, and her actually beautiful advice that she gives to Lakshman, and the way that she consoles Kausalyaji as well. Those conversations are incredibly poignant and moving and beautiful. We will see in the next episode. So for now, we'll pause here and welcome Rebby.
Thank you so much, Shripriya. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Looking forward to today's conversation.
Absolutely, likewise.
So one of the questions that actually, I was going to ask everyone to reflect on for this episode was, when you have to say goodbye, what's the best way to do that? Is there a good way to say goodbye to someone? Is there a bad way to say goodbye to someone, whether you're the person leaving or you're the person staying? So if you have any thoughts on that, then I'd be very interested to hear them. But otherwise, on anything else that we talked about today. Yeah.
So is there a good way to say goodbye to someone?
Yeah.
I think when you're saying goodbye to someone, I think that the thing that strikes me is that tomorrow is not guaranteed for anyone, right? And so it might be a slightly somber place to start, but when you say goodbye to someone, you literally don't know when you're going to see them again. And so I think if we are always able to keep that in mind when we're saying goodbye to someone, then I think we would act differently if we kept that at the forefront of our mind, right?
Yeah.
And I think that to me is because in listening to what you were describing in terms of where we are at this point of the Ramayana, I think I was also thinking about what it means to be strong, because in the question that you just gave me about what it means to say goodbye appropriately, if you truly think that there's a chance that you will not see someone again, you will by definition have to be strong, right?
Yeah.
And so I think in that context, and indeed the spiritual context, we're not talking about physical strength, of course. We're talking about mental strength, or indeed even emotional strength. And I think to me, that's more almost about durability. And I think that's about how well I'm able to stay centered in the face of the ups and downs of life. How am I able to remain equipoise in spite of the inevitable peaks and troughs that we will all encounter in life? And I don't think that's necessarily just about weathering the storm, but also as we experience the highs of life, I think it's about understanding that to chase those highs in a completely unchecked manner is also probably not a good idea. And I think it's also about understanding that both the peak or the trough, those highs and lows, neither of those necessarily will persist, right? Because the only constant is change. And I think that's wrapped up in the question that you asked around saying goodbye, right? Because if you felt that you'll always see them, then nothing would change, right? But of course, that's not the case.
Yeah.
So I think we have to think about what can we do in order to cultivate a level of mental discipline or mental strength even to enable us to weather those storms, to encounter the highs and lows of life.
Yeah.
And I think that comes from discipline, and as well as systematically training the mind. And it's something that I'd love to ask you about, because it's something that we've covered in our classes. And I think everyone who's listening to this podcast will already understand that in having a more disciplined mind, you are of course having a higher degree of self-control. You are able to cultivate calmness and ultimately tranquility, or indeed a more lasting form of tranquility. So, I mean, I'd love to be able to ask you, if it's okay, as to how we can actually go about training the mind to actually cultivate that discipline.
I think, great question. I think also that the point you raised about, saying goodbye and having that thought is also so interesting, because if we bring that back to this idea of being strong, then, if I was not sure whether I would see a person again when I say goodbye, I wonder whether we would have the kind of courage to actually say goodbye to people. I think it would actually, in some ways it kind of makes it harder.
Absolutely.
Because you're not sure. And so that question around, like, developing strength and discipline is, you can see it even in that example, right? That it's not a guarantee, right? And that's a fact. And therefore, to be able to still kind of continue with doing whatever it is that we have to do, is takes strength.
Absolutely.
I think that question of how to develop strength really leads us back to, what do we mean by a strong mind? And I think, you mentioned kind of a couple of things. One is having the sort of durability, right? And also that kind of ability to weather ups and downs that come to us. I think that there's, also this word that comes to mind of kind of resilience and developing that ability to face challenges and to adapt.
Yep.
And to not kind of be thrown off course, I guess, by challenges and obstacles, etc., that come our way. I think if we break it down, right? Like, if we're thinking about, okay, how do I become strong? And when I say how do I become strong, I'm talking about, like, how do I make my mind strong? One of the ways of looking at it, I think, is if you just bring it down to like a really granular level, right? And say, for example, in the period of, 24 hours, like in a day, what is it that I can do with my time to develop mental strength, right? Just like I will dedicate, whatever, half an hour every day for exercise or for eating well or whatever.
Yep.
Can I also dedicate that time to developing that kind of mental strength? And I think one way of looking at it is, for people who are so inclined, there are lots of spiritual practices which would help us to develop that kind of strength.
Right.
But I think, a really simple thing is just like following a discipline.
Okay.
Because I think a disciplined mind is one that can be strong.
Okay.
I don't think I would necessarily equate the two.
Fine.
Like, disciplined equals strong, but I think being disciplined would provide a really good foundation for having a strong mind. And that could be anything, right? It could be, I decide that I'm going to wake up at a particular time every day.
Yeah.
When I give myself the opportunity to fulfill that promise, then the more I do it, the greater strength I build, right? Because I find that I'm able to live up to something that an ideal that I have. I'm able to kind of be consistent in my behavior.
Right.
I'm able to put aside distractions or, whatever it is that might be coming in the way and actually stick to that discipline. I think that's a really great starting point for developing strength. because it helps us, I think, to just become more confident in ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right? That whether or not anyone else recognizes,
Yep.
like, I know that I have in me the ability to do this.
Yeah.
And therefore I have more confidence to take on the next thing.
Sure.
Right? Or to take on a bigger challenge, a bigger discipline. Yeah.
It's so, I mean, thank you very much for that. I mean, it's so interesting to hear you say that, because I think, how many of us are disciplined enough, to make time for physical exercise. I wonder how many of us actually think of like actually taking effort or spending effort to also do exercises that can build our mental strength in the same way. And I think it's really interesting you talked about consistency. I was talking with a friend of mine recently about this, and actually he was talking about this in the context of working out physically consistently, right? And he was talking about reframing the idea of success in that context, but I think obviously it can be applied in the mental strength context as well. He was talking about, reframing, rather than thinking about, or rather than focusing in on, the results that you will gain from working out. He was like, why don't we think about success as just showing up, right? And so let's say I want to work out over the next 3 months, and let's say I can work out twice a week, or I want to work out twice a week.
Yeah.
That is 8 sessions a month, right? So 24 sessions over three months. And so can I just hit those 24 sessions within 3 months? But in thinking about consistency in that context as well, it's not okay in the first month to be really intense and do 12 sessions and then say, okay, well, in the next month I can do 4 less because I've done 4 extra. No. Once you've hit your 8 for that month, everything else is a bonus, but you have to 8 in every month. And I think that really does speak to what you're talking about when it comes to that consistency. And as I said, I think it can very much be applied when we do make the space to actually cultivate that mental strength as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that point around, the tangibility of it is also really interesting. Like with our bodies, like we're so much in our bodies.
Absolutely.
We're constantly experiencing ourselves as, this physical frame. And therefore it's so tangible, right? Like I know if I need to make a change, the second that I like start to feel unwell, I'm immediately aware of it.
Absolutely.
Right? Like I get a sniffle or a headache and I'm like, okay, I need to do something, right? And get my whatever medicine. I think it's so interesting because we can't see our mind in the same way, right? And we don't necessarily, or maybe it's just that we haven't learned to recognize those signs. And so very often it gets to a point where, if you give the physical equivalent, that it's like letting myself get to the point where I have like a full-blown cold. And then I realize, oh my God, I have to do something about this. Because at this point, I'm just in bed all day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas, 2-3 days earlier, like if I'd clocked the headache or if I'd clocked the stuffy nose, I would have done something. And I feel like, maybe we're getting better at it.
Yeah.
Particularly in terms of like, just awareness of it, even in society.
I was going to say, I was going to say the same, just in terms of recognition around of those things and managing those things more actively. I think we are on a positive trajectory, thankfully, right? That we are seeing more and more people now with the understanding that, if I am feeling low or whatever, it's not always necessarily going to be that way, or it doesn't always have to be that way.
Yeah.
But sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was just that kind of, it's just learning to recognize those, whether it's a pattern or just an isolated thought or feeling or whatever it might be. I think that would really help us if we were to kind of, when we want to be committed to working on our own mind and, developing that kind of mental wellness, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think, when we're talking about strength, right, to bring it back to that question, and we're talking about that ability to kind of go through the ups and downs. And I think when you see it in the characters in the Ramayana, for me, that really kind of brings it home that one, we've discussed a lot about Ram and the way that he experiences this whole thing of being sent into exile.
Mm-hmm.
But particularly here, like in this portion that we saw, the way that Sita reacts, in that she's not, sort of complaining or grieving or, saying, this is so unfair. Like, why is it happening to you?
Yeah.
And then saying, well, if you have to go, then I have to go. And that's like a disaster for my life, right?
Sure.
Like her reaction is so different. And I think even if, and there is a way to, I guess, articulate that strength, but it's so powerful to see it in the way that she responds to that situation.
Definitely.
By asserting her agency, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And not kind of saying that I'm a victim to circumstance. Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree. I think very much, as you said, if we take Sita's example from this part of the Ramayana, we're able to see that she was able to, I think, firstly accept the decision, almost so much without even a word, right? And as we heard in the dialogue between her and Ram, it's not because she didn't accept that decision because she didn't feel empowered to say or think otherwise. As we heard, she very much did, right? I think the reason why she accepts it, the decision that is because she understands so clearly both the duty as well as the sacrifice that are very much the features of that decision. And she was able to act accordingly. And so I think, thinking about that, and I think being able to develop that sense of acceptance or an attitude of acceptance, I think it's so important. And I think it's really interesting because I think acceptance, especially when it's something which comes from a source outside of us, can often be seen as almost a defeatist word, right? So if someone says, you must accept this, or accept this and move on, it can lead to frustration, right? And, that can often come because we might be not happy with the situation. So you talked about, so Sita in this example very much could have reacted like that, right? As you said, why is this happening and what does this mean for my life? Or it can often come as a result of us being sometimes in denial around certain realities around a situation, right? But I think acceptance, even in those contexts, can be incredibly freeing, because I think acceptance makes us focus on the next step, right? Which is of course the future step, as opposed to keeping our focus in the past, where we're unable to affect any type of change at all. And I think if we're thinking about future steps, the place that you take action is, of course, in the present. So I think that, together with also, to me, I think a sense of acceptance also helps us to shed attachments. So thinking about it in this example, Sita absolutely could have been attached to her life, as a member of the royal family, right? But instead, she immediately removes that attachment, if she even had it in the first place, that is, and she accepts that her life will be very different, and she moves forward into that. So I would love to ask you, of course, how is it that we can cultivate an attitude of acceptance?
It's something that I think is like so important for just living life, right? And being able to deal with what comes to us. And something that, in spite of that, is, I guess, that so many of us will struggle with at some point or another. I think it's about sort of, just recognizing what's within our power to change.
Absolutely.
Because there are some things that we can, right? And equally there are, there'll be things that we can't change. And I think that one, we often don't take the time to think about the difference between the two. But two, even when we know that we can't change something, for whatever reason, the mind still ends up, holding on to that possibility, or, it could have happened this way, or why didn't it happen? So I think it's, and this is probably not a very helpful way to answer, but I feel like with acceptance, you just kind of have to do it,
Right.
you know? It's one of those things where when you ask how, like how to forgive, or like how to let go, how to accept, you kind of just have to do it, You have to just kind of be like, okay, like this is how it is.
Yeah.
What can I do?
Right.
What can I not do?
Yep.
If there's something that I can't do, then can I just park it? Right? Like, can I just put it aside? And maybe I will need time to like process it. Maybe it's a difficult thing for me to, go through or to accept.
Sure.
That's different.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's different to give ourselves the time to like work through something that's happened. But even with those things, it is, we still eventually need to come to terms with the fact that it's happened.
Yeah.
Right. And I think most, it's easiest to kind of understand this in terms of, the example of loss.
Yes.
Right. Whether that is like a material loss that takes place, or, people. Not necessarily because someone's died, but just because they're not part of our life anymore.
Sure.
Right. When it's something that's not in our control and we are very attached to that person, it becomes a really hard thing to deal with, right? Like, how can I accept that this person is no longer available to me? And I just really want them to be, right? Like, I just want them to be there.
Yeah.
And I think that, one is the fact that that person is gone is not something that I can do anything about. But the fact that I want them to be with me, if we kind of, if we look at that thought or that feeling as an indication of like how much love I have for that person, it changes that experience into maybe something more positive and something that actually gives me peace and comfort and solace, rather than, it's disturbing the fact that this person is not with me anymore. But the fact that I miss them means I love them.
Right.
Right. And I can still continue to feel that.
Yeah.
And maybe it will take some time for me to get used to the fact that they're not there anymore. But I can still accept, right, that, okay, they're not here.
Yeah.
And it may take time, right, for my mind to come around to that fact. So yeah, I guess unhelpful answer in the sense that
no, not at all.
With acceptance, you kind of just, I sort of feel like it's one of those things you kind of just have to practice. And I think the more we practice that, the better we become at it, right? Like, start with something small.
Yeah.
It's raining. I don't want it to be raining. I don't want it to be cold, but I can't do anything about it, right?
I wish I'd heard that on my way over today.
I mean, if it was the other way, then you could, like, I don't know if you were able to, what's that thing where they make it rain? There's like, cloud seeding.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, right.
It's something you can do about it. But when it's raining and you want it to stop, you can't do anything.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
And so what are you going to do? Like, we just have to, okay, it's raining. Like, And then, yes, I'll put my coat on, I'll get my umbrella,
Sure.
like I'll wrap up.
Because those are the things you can do something about.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, I thought it was, as always from you, Shripriya, an incredibly helpful answer. So thank you very much for it. I think the reframing that you talked about of taking something which can potentially cause pain in this case, especially if it's in the context of a loss or grief, but actually reminding ourselves that the depth of that feeling is indicative of just the amount of love that you had or still have, and of course still have.
And how much joy they gave
exactly,
us. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's so useful. Thank you.
Yeah. I think, it's, these like, sometimes we just have to be reminded that we can like see things in a different way.
Yeah.
And sometimes experiences teach us that, right? But sometimes it's through conversations that we figure out, like, people think of things in different ways, perceive them in different ways. It's a way for us to learn as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's super helpful, Shripriya. Thank you so much once again. I think the acceptance that you talked about, and being able to cultivate that acceptance is also really helpful and really necessary in order for us to gain a sense of clarity also. And I think here, bringing it back to the story, I think it's very plain to see that Sita had that intellectual or indeed moral clarity, right? It was just so clear.
Yeah.
And, I think about areas in my life where perhaps I feel grateful that I do have a sense of clarity. And I think one of the areas is, look, Shripriya, you've known me for a long time, and you know that I'm vegan, and you know that I've been vegan also for a long time. And I think that is an area where I feel grateful that I do seem to have that clarity. And I was reading something about veganism, as always, recently. And what they were talking about is they were talking about how people who, if they become vegan and they happen to then decide to not be vegan after a short amount of time, that dynamic generally exists amongst people who only made the choice initially to be vegan, who are only ever thinking about themselves rather than something greater than themselves, right?
Interesting.
And so the example that was given is we often hear about celebrities going on podcasts, and I don't want to break the fourth wall by talking about other podcasts, but they'll go on a podcast and they'll say, they're vegan, and they're vegan mainly for health reasons and because they think veganism is some like panacea, for like eternal youth or whatever. And inevitably, when it doesn't turn out that way, those same celebrities will then go on those same podcasts 3, 6, 9 months later and say they're no longer vegan and it wasn't working out for them. Whereas I think for a person who has chosen to be vegan because they are thinking about things like animal welfare or environmental considerations or resource allocation, that by definition are all things that are greater than themselves. And so I think there's also something to be said about the importance of clarity and the importance of that conviction.
Yeah.
And so I'd also love to ask how we can go about gaining that clarity, if that's okay.
Yeah. I think it really is just, a process of, I guess, investigation and inquiry and reflection. And when we do that for ourselves consistently over a period of time with reference to, sources of knowledge, and testing ideas for ourselves, within ourselves, all of those things help to develop clarity. And then on the basis of clarity, we're able to develop conviction, which then, carries through into our actions.
Right.
So I think it is just kind of that process of learning, reflection, then also acting on our reflections.
Yeah.
And through that, we gain the clarity to be able to kind of see what we want and then to become, to develop conviction, I guess. Yeah. a great point to end on, about clarity and conviction. And thank you again, Rebby, so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much once again for having me.
Thank you. And to all our listeners, we will see you next time. Hari Om.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Living Ramayana. To stay updated on Chinmaya Mission UK's activities, visit our website chinmayauk.org and follow us on social media. Subscribe to this podcast and join us for the next episode. Hari Om.